This is Candor Talk. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get right into the show. But before we get into the show, don't forget to check out our website, sylviaexpress.com. Hey, fabulous people. How you doing? Okay, this is a fabulous Saturday, and thank you for tuning into Candor Talk. Okay, so before I get into what I really want to talk about today, I'm going to preface everything I'm going to say by talking about the Democratic memo real quickly. Now, the Democrats just released a memo today that was basically refuting everything in the devin-nunes memo. I'm not going to discuss that memo, and the reason why is because I do not believe the Democrats should have released this memo. I think we need to focus on the Trump crime family and what has been breaking in the news right now, and that the Dem memo is just a distraction. And right now, I don't understand why the Democrats did that, because all it does is basically divert attention away from the fact that things are blowing up right now in the Trump-Russia investigation. So I'm going to get into that. All right, so I presume you have all heard about Rick Gates' guilty plea. I hope everyone understands that this is the biggest thing to happen in the Trump-Russia investigation thus far. And I said before that the Russian indictments was the biggest thing before. Who in the world knew that what just transpired, the Rick Gates guilty plea, was going to transpire? But anyway, here's what happened that set everything off, that got Rick Gates to plead guilty. Let me play this clip real quickly that explains that, and then we'll get into that. Here it is.
As of now, Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller has charged 19 people with crimes, including 13 Russians who don't live here. And of the 5 American citizens who've been charged, only 2 of them have not already pleaded guilty. And today, those 2 who have not pled guilty found themselves loaded up with more charges, 32 to be exact. The status report on the case today was signed by Andrew Weissman, and here is what Steve Bannon said about Andrew Weissman in Michael Wolff's Fire and Fury. You've got the LeBron James of money laundering investigations on you. Everybody in that White House was worried about Weissman. The special prosecutor unsealed 32 new charges against former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his aide Rick Gates. There are 16 counts related to falsifying individual income tax returns, 7 counts of failing to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts, 5 counts of bank fraud, conspiracy, and 4 counts of bank fraud. The new indictment claims that Paul Manafort and Rick Gates concealed years of lobbying work for the pro-Russia government in Ukraine. They laundered millions of dollars in proceeds and misled investigators about their foreign work. Quote, in total, more than $75 million flowed through the offshore accounts. Manafort, with the assistance of Gates, laundered more than $30 million, income that he concealed from the United States Department of the Treasury, the Department of Justice, and others. Some of the charges, which include fraudulently obtaining bank loans and lying on income tax returns, allegedly occurred as Paul Manafort became chairman of the Trump campaign. These latest charges come less than a week after Robert Mueller indicted those 13 Russians and 3 Russian companies for interfering in the presidential election, and only 2 days after a Dutch lawyer pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about some of his interactions with Rick Gates. The New York Times reports that Robert Mueller could be trying to use these charges as leverage to get closer to the White House. Mr. Manafort's friends have said that Mr. Mueller's indictment is an effort to pressure him into providing information about Mr. Trump and his campaign. If so, Thursday's indictment adds to that pressure.
Okay, so you just heard what basically transpired, and this is what transpired that led to basically Rick Gates pleading guilty. So first we find out about the 32-count indictment that let me just be very clear, abundantly clear as an attorney, that if they were found guilty, Manafort especially, they would likely die in prison. And I'll get to that in a minute. But subsequently, Rick Gates pleads guilty. Here's what happened. Here it is.
Former Trump campaign advisor Rick Gates pleaded guilty Friday to conspiring against the United States and making false statements to the special counsel. As part of a plea deal, Gates will cooperate with Robert Mueller's investigation into possible ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. Each of the charges Gates faces carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison.
Okay, that part about each sentence that he was facing carries a maximum of 5 years in prison. That's actually not actually completely accurate, but I'll get into that in a minute. Now, why is this story important, and what does it have to do with the imposter in the White House? Now, listen, Rick Gates escaped an almost certainly long prison sentence in exchange for spilling the beans on everyone and not just Manafort. On the bank fraud charges alone, he was looking at up to 30 years on each count, and there are 4 counts. He was looking at 5 counts of bank conspiracy, which also carry up to 30 years in prison. And if they were to run consecutively, which they probably wouldn't have because of the sentencing guidelines in federal court, but if they were to run consecutively, he literally would die in prison. However, even if he only got 30 years total, he literally would be over 70 years old by the time he got out of prison. So in exchange basically for his life, he agreed to give up everyone and everything. There is no way Mueller made that sweetheart deal by dropping a 32-count indictment against Gates just so he could testify against Manafort. That's absolutely implausible. It would never happen. Mueller has enough evidence to ensure that Manafort basically dies in prison. He didn't need Gates to convict Manafort. He already has Manafort dead cold. Now listen, Gates was a deputy campaign executive basically in the Trump campaign. He was on the campaign even after Manafort had left. He was part of the inaugural team, and he also helped raise money. Now, it is clear from everything that's happened, from the indictments, from all the evidence that we've seen, that Manafort, Trump, and Gates were in on a scheme. Because if you listen to Manafort, when he's asked whether Trump had relationships with Russian oligarchs, it's clear that he did. Here's what Manafort said. Here's the clip.
So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
Okay, did you hear that? I mean, like, he was a mumbling, stuttering buffoon here. If you asked him in that clip, what is his name? Is your name Paul Manafort? He'd be like, that's what my mom says. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. Like, is your name Paul Manafort? He couldn't even credibly refute Trump's relationship with Russian oligarchs. Why? Now we know why. Manafort and Gates agreed to work for free for the Trump campaign. Trump decided to make these quote-unquote volunteers, basically, his campaign manager and deputy campaign manager. Here's the problem. The only thing free in life is air. Even water costs money. And from the indictments, Gates and Manafort, up to 2016, were engaged in this deliberate scam to defraud the U.S. and promote Russian-owned Ukrainian interests. The Republican National Convention, they changed the platform to a more Russian-promoted platform. Why? Now here's my theory. My theory, based on the evidence and the indictments, all three, Trump, Manafort, Gates, were engaged in a plot to undermine the U.S. elections, create discord in the United States, undermine U.S. institutions, and they were paid handsomely by Russia for it. That's what I believe. That's what my theory is of the case. And Gates, who got the deal of a lifetime, won't likely do more than 5 years in prison maximum. That can't be just because he decided to give up Manafort. As I said before, that just can't be because he decided to give up Manafort. Manafort was never the target of the investigation. It's not a win for Mueller to make a deal with Gates like that just secures a conviction against Manafort. A man that he already has, that he already is going to be able to easily secure a conviction against him. The federal government would never make that kind of a deal without being afforded something substantial. A Manafort conviction isn't substantial. Manafort is critical to get Trump, period. And that's why Mueller is squeezing Manafort to the point where he is ensuring him literally 3 options he can choose from. And these are the 3 options that Manafort can choose from. He can cooperate, he can die in prison, or he can commit suicide. But those are, unfortunately for him, the only choices he can make. It's harsh, but it's true. Manafort has 3 options. He can cooperate, die in prison, or he can kill himself. And God forbid he kills himself. But the truth is, these are the 3 options you have left. That is how much they have squeezed Manafort. He's literally in a bind right now. All of his options suck. Every option he has is a terrible option, but those are the only options he has right now because the charges against him are so severe that he's looking at likely dying in prison. He's 68 years old. The likelihood of him ever getting out of prison is slim to none. So that's the reason why Mueller is squeezing him. And so what does Mueller try to do to make sure that he can get Manafort to basically start talking? He indicts him on more charges. Here's the clip. I'm going to play it right now.
The federal grand jury has returned a new superseding indictment in the Manafort case. The indictment says that Manafort secretly retained a group of former senior European politicians to take positions favorable to Ukraine, including by lobbying in the United States. It says in 2012 and 2013, Manafort used at least 4 offshore accounts to wire more than 2 million euros to pay the group of former politicians.
Okay, so now you see, obviously, right now that he is in so much trouble. Manafort right now basically has 3 indictments out right now. And he doesn't have that much longer to make a deal. Sooner or later, Mueller won't need him. Manafort is pretending like he's innocent, which he should, and I agree with him to pretend like he's innocent because, I mean, if you're never going to admit that you committed a crime if you're going to try to defend yourself or whatever. But that facade won't last very long. It just isn't a very persuasive facade. And the thing is, the unfortunate thing for him, which I think he hasn't actually really thought all the way out, is that is not something that's going to last very long at all. Because sooner or later, people are going to start to question whether or not, you know, all this evidence against you is actually true and whether it's credible. And the fact that people are getting indicted all over the place, I think it's going to be difficult for him to maintain that facade. But after the Gates guilty plea, Manafort also gave a response basically saying he didn't understand how his own business partner would basically plead guilty when he's innocent, but he's going to continue to defend himself, et cetera, et cetera. And people started to be like, well, he's still saying that he's innocent. Well, I mean, literally every guilty person says they're innocent. That is not persuasive. The evidence is so overwhelming, it's obvious that he's actually guilty. He's culpable. So there's no point in anybody even pretending anymore like he's not. And look, Mueller already knows what Trump did. He has evidence and witnesses to testify to their involvement. But he knows he needs more. He's going against the alleged president of the United States. He won't be able to indict him the way he indicted the 15 or 16 other people. The 13 Russians, Gates, and Manafort. He's not going to be able to indict Trump the same way he indicted those people. He's not going to be able to get him to plead like he got the other 5 people to plead. Any case against the imposter in the White House has to be impenetrable before it's ever even brought anywhere. It has to be impenetrable, and that's something that Mueller knows. And that's where Mueller is going right now. He's going after Manafort because Manafort knows it all. Manafort helped facilitate what was transpiring. That interference, the Russian conspiracy, that was something that was helped. Manafort helped facilitate. Period. And my belief is that Mueller wants to bypass Congress and indict Trump. And he needs Manafort for that. However, he just got a big boost, making indicting an executive branch head more plausible. I'm going to play this clip and I'm going to explain to you why I think indicting Trump is a lot more plausible now than it actually ever was before. So here's the clip.
Tonight, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens indicted, charged with 1 count of felony invasion of privacy. A court reporter in St. Louis tweeting, "I just saw Missouri Governor Eric Greitens being led away."
Okay, so you just heard that right there, right? The Missouri sitting governor was just indicted. And let me just explain why that is so important to anybody. Okay. This Missouri case is a case about an indictment of an executive branch head. See, the governor of a state is basically the president of a state. The constitutions in states are basically a mirror image of the federal constitution. The executive branch in the governor of a state is a part of the executive branch. The president is part of the federal executive branch. And right now, a state just indicted basically the president of their state. So that particular situation makes it much more likely that Mueller has the grounds, at least bring the indictment. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. Because this is the thing. I am comfortable saying that I think what Mueller's position is that he's trying to indict. And I believe Mueller realizes that the GOP-led Congress are Trump puppets and will not do anything with his findings. The way he's developing this case with securing 15, 16 indictments, 5 guilty pleas is not the way a person just drafting a report would be operating. Mueller would not be squeezing Manafort just to get Manafort to spill the beans for a report that he's going to be submitting to Congress. He wouldn't be offering plea deals if he just wanted to submit a report to Congress. He wants to indict Trump. Now listen, the Supreme Court has not addressed whether a sitting president can be indicted. We know his children can be indicted, but it's never been addressed whether a sitting president can be indicted. Therefore, Mueller can indict him, even if it's later reversed by the Supreme Court. And the benefit to indicting him is that the public will see the indictment because they will be public, and we'll know everything that transpired. If he were to rely on the GOP Congress to impeach Trump or to release the report, that would be absurd. By the time they would release that report, they would have done so much to damage the credibility of that report that it would have no meaning. And then they would have no reason to actually impeach Donald Trump. And like the Dem memo, that's what they did. They waited a long time before they released it. They released it on a Saturday, allowed it to be released on a Saturday. They waited a long time, and then the whole time before that, they just were discrediting the entire memo. That's what they would do with just a Mueller report. And then also, indicting Trump puts pressure on the GOP Congress or whoever is the head of Congress. Hopefully the Democrats take the Congress back, but to decide whether a currently indicted president should be impeached. Just think about it. No matter the end result, the damage to Trump will be done. How does an indicted president even operate? And then also, in order to reverse his indictment, the Supreme Court would have to decide that. But before they decide make that decision whether a sitting president can be indicted, the indictment will stand. So which means a sitting president will be indicted. A sitting president will be there. That puts so much pressure on all those people, even the sycophants, to have to do something. So I believe that Mueller is basically looking to indict Trump. And the thing is, if he does, it would put enormous pressure on the GOP to remove him from office. And that is why Manafort is critical. And that's why this Gates guilty plea is critical. Mueller needs Manafort because Manafort knows even more than Gates. Gates is going to give him Manafort, hopefully. We'll see, because I'm not 100% certain that Manafort's going to flip. But Gates is important because Gates knows a lot. But Manafort gives him the last piece of the puzzle. Like I said, I'm not sure if Manafort's going to flip or not. However, if he does, just understand this. If Manafort does flip, if you ever hear anything that Manafort actually did flip, then you understand that the imposter in the White House is going down in burning flames. The flames are going to be so burning, they're going to be so hot, they're going to be scorching hot, if you ever hear that. Now, and some people are saying that he's probably never going to cooperate because he would be, he's looking for maybe a pardon from the imposter in the White House. Let me be abundantly clear. Manafort may get a pardon, but he's facing state crimes in multiple jurisdictions, and no governor is going to pardon him. And Trump cannot pardon him from state crimes. He will die in prison, either state or federal prison, if he doesn't cooperate. I already stated his 3 options. Therefore, a pardon won't help him. It actually hurts him because a pardon is an admission you committed a crime. Also, Manafort will be required to pay legal fees multiple times for multiple trials because he'll be going to trials in all these different jurisdictions. They will bankrupt him and he'll still die in prison. So if he makes a deal with Mueller, no state is likely going to go after him. But if he doesn't make a deal with Mueller and he goes to trial and then he gets pardoned, he's literally going to be tried by those states. And that pardon is going to be an admission of guilt. And that's why a lot of people sometimes refuse. They're saying people should start to refuse pardons, especially from someone like Trump. Okay, so that's the thing. He's not getting a pardon is not going to save Manafort. So, and it's not just Gates and Manafort that Mueller is targeting, because I think what Mueller is trying to do is find as many people as he possibly can and go after all the crimes he can find on people and see if he can get them to flip. So Mueller is not just going after Gates and Manafort. He's also coming for, guess who? Jared Kushner. Here's a clip.
Special counsel Robert Mueller is reportedly expanding his investigation efforts into Jared Kushner and his business dealings. Sources familiar with the matter told CNN that Mueller's team is asking questions about Kushner's efforts to secure financing for his company during the presidential transition. It's not clear what's motivating Mueller's effort, but this is the first sign we've seen that he's looking into Kushner's non-Russian foreign contacts, including Chinese and Qatari investors.
Okay, every single solitary human being with a pulse knows that Jared Kushner is corrupt as hell. Now, I'm comfortable believing he's likely going to get indicted, too. I'm comfortable with that. And I'm becoming more comfortable saying that Donald Trump Jr. is going to get indicted as well. I'm not 100% there with Donald Trump Jr., but I'm at like 95% with Jared Kushner, and I'm about 86% with Donald Trump Jr. But let me just tell you this. Kushner knows as much as Manafort, or maybe more than Manafort. That's why I say that Manafort has a small window in order to make a deal with Mueller. If Mueller is able to get Jared, and then he flips Jared, then he definitely doesn't need Manafort. And Manafort will die in federal prison. So he doesn't really have that much longer to make a deal with Mueller. And the thing is, if Jared Kushner does end up flipping, which is something I'm guaranteeing you that if he's the kind of charges that Mueller will bring against him will scare him so much, he's not going to go and do that kind of prison time. He's the kind of person that will actually flip. So if Jared Kushner does actually flip, basically flip in this case, I don't know, the volume I think might have been down there for a minute. I hope you guys still heard what I was saying. But if Jared Kushner does actually flip in this particular case, then, that's pretty much game, set, match, nevertheless. But nevertheless, Mueller is putting together a puzzle. Let that be abundantly clear. Every single piece is connected, and all of it is connected to the Trump-Russia collusion conspiracy investigation. That is what this is all about at the end of the day. So when you see these indictments and people say to you, it had nothing to do with collusion, has nothing to do with conspiracy, has nothing to do with Trump, that's just delusions. It's not true. This has been and will always be about Trump. What happened with Gates was about Trump. What happened with Manafort was about Trump. What happened with the Russian indictments was about Trump. All 5 guilty pleas, it's all about Trump. That's it. The Gates guilty plea is the biggest thing that ever happened in the Russia investigation thus far because Gates was part of the campaign. Nobody can argue anymore that Trump campaign had nothing to do with Russia. If the investments and the scam that they were running was run by people who were owned and operated and controlled by Russian oligarchs. It was controlled and operated by Russians. So no one can argue anymore that the Trump campaign had nothing to do with Russia. Yes, they did. As a matter of fact, 2 of the campaign heads were just indicted. One of them just pled guilty. So the truth is the Trump campaign did collude with Russia. It's just, did Trump know about it? Was he a part of it? And I say, yes, he was a part of it. And that is the reason why he is going to go down in burning flames. And the fact that Gates now just pled guilty, he's going to give up a lot to Mueller. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on Manafort. We'll see whether Manafort end up taking the bait. But if Manafort does decide to cooperate, he will be able to give Mueller Trump on a silver platter. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a break. I'll be right back from the break, and we will talk about some other stuff, some other interesting stuff that's happened this week. I'll be right back. Right. Thank you guys so much for staying with us. Okay. So anyway, if you guys have been paying attention to what's been going on with Parkland after the tragedy that happened in Parkland, these kids literally started an international movement, literally to stop gun violence all over, not just in the United States, all over the world. They're literally known all over the world because these kids were not willing to sit down and allow any more tragedies like what they had to endure. And I want to remind people, because there are people out there making these comments, saying things about these kids being actors and crisis actors. You are deplorable. You're a despicable human being. If you even have the audacity to even think that these kids that suffered a real tragedy, they were walking past dead bodies. They were walking past bodies of people that they knew, that they were friends with. They literally saw blood in their classrooms, their teachers getting killed. Some of them had to sit there with dead bodies. So do not sit here and talk about these kids being crisis actors. You are a deplorable, despicable human being. As a matter of fact, are you even human? That's a question that needs to be asked. But nevertheless, these kids have sparked a movement where even the Republicans can no longer hide anymore. The Republicans cannot hide from this anymore. Marco Rubio actually ended up doing a town hall with CNN, and he actually got blasted. But let me just say something about Marco Rubio, because I do have to give him some credit here. It took a lot of courage for him to go into that kind of environment, knowing that you are an NRA pawn. Okay, and that you have literally taken millions upon millions of dollars from the NRA. It took a lot of courage to do that. A lot of these politicians aren't facing the music. He faced the music, and he got blasted. I'm going to play this clip. Here it is.
Senator Rubio, I just listened to your opening, and thank you. I want to like you. Here's the problem, and I'm a brutally honest person, so I'm just going to say it up front.
Yes, sir.
When I like you, you know it, and when I'm pissed at you, you know it. Your comments this week and those of our president have been pathetically weak.
Okay, I'm telling you that was a clip that I think that should make us all feel proud. Listen, we need gun control. This show might go a little bit over 30 minutes today because there's one other clip I think is very important. You guys need to hear. It's something that happened at the CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee or whatever, their annual convention or whatever. I need to play this clip that happened, something that happened there, because it's this lady literally blasted Trump in the Republican Party on the CPAC stage. But nevertheless, that clip right there it was basically the embodiment of everybody's feelings about how the imposter in the White House had responded to Parkland. But the one thing I want you guys to understand is that people are fighting back. Nobody's sitting down anymore. Everybody realized after Parkland, and these kids realized that no. You're not going to feed us any more bullshit. The thing is, you guys are pawns for the NRA, and as a matter of fact, the NRA is crumbling right now. Companies are leaving. They're fleeing. Hertz left. Delta canceled their relationship with them. Numerous insurance companies, Chubb's Insurance canceled it. Other credit card companies are refusing to basically, use their brand or whatever for discounts. Literally, numerous places. United Airlines. I mean, there's so many places now that have said that they're not going to do any more business with the NRA. So these kids, I'm telling you, that's the future of this country. It is really, really bright. So we should be very, very happy because things are changing. Not just what's happening in the Trump-Russia investigation, which I think is literally sooner or later it's pretty much over for the imposter in the White House. But these kids are changing the conversation, the political landscape in this country, and that is something we should be very proud of. But now I'm going to play this clip from CPAC, from this conservative woman who's been in the Republican Party for so long. I don't really know who she is, per se. I've never heard of her until today when I saw what she did at CPAC. But I want you guys to hear what she says about the Republican Party. Here's the clip.
Mona, what gets you riled up?
So I agree with everything my fellow panelists have said. And I could say that the misuse of data, like, the so-called 77 cents on the dollar figure, which is a statistic that's impossible to kill, even though it's false. But I'm actually going to twist this around a bit and say that I'm disappointed in people on our side for being hypocrites about sexual harassers and abusers of women who are in our party, who are sitting in the White House, who brag about their extramarital affairs, who brag about mistreating women. And because he happens to have an R after his name, we look the other way, we don't complain. This is a party that was ready to endorse, the Republican Party endorsed Roy Moore for the Senate in the state of Alabama, even though he was a credibly accused child molester. You cannot claim that you stand for women and put up with that.
Okay, it took so much courage for her to actually do that in that kind of platform, because basically CPAC is basically just a KKK rally. Essentially, that's my interpretation of it, and maybe because I'm black, that just kind of is how I've interpreted it from what I've seen, especially considering some of the comments that were made about Michael Steele, the former Republican National Committee chairman. And honestly, I'm not even going to get into Michael Steele. Michael Steele can defend himself. I'm not going to defend him. He should have never joined that party in the first place. They didn't want you. They didn't like you. They used you. And now you know how they feel about you. But the thing is, one thing that she did do, I'm telling you, in this particular political climate, it takes a lot of courage to do exactly what she did, and especially in that forum. Things are changing, guys. Things are happening. People are no longer willing to sit on the sidelines, and people are no longer willing to deal with Trump's bullshit. I'm about to take a break. I'll be right back.
We run things.
All right, fabulous people. Thank you so much for listening to the entire show. If you listened all the way to the end, I really appreciate you. If you listen at all, I actually really appreciate you. But nevertheless, don't forget to check SylviaExpress.com. Don't forget to check that out. I'm also going to be posting stuff on there as well. And I also want to tell you guys, like I said, I will be here on Saturday to tell you and give you the scoop on what my interpretation of things that have happened and transpired with the imposter in the White House. And I will continue to speak out against the imposter in the White House. I am doing this because I think it's important. So I hope you guys enjoyed it and enjoy your weekend. Have a great week, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.